Last week, I gave an update on the Richmond, Indiana fire that took place back on April 11th. Experts described to me a scene that caused, quote, a limitless and unpredictable spectrum of chemicals coming from the fire. Eventually, the EPA released some information about air testing that happened within the half-a-mile evacuation zone that took place, and they found benzene, hydrogen cyanide, and several other chemicals at concerning levels within this half-a-mile zone. If you want more information about the initial explosion, that video will be linked below, and you can get some of that information there. But today, I'm going to go over a few new issues surrounding this tragic event that, again, took place in Richmond, Indiana. First, we're going to go over the fact that residents are now being allowed back inside of this half-a-mile zone that had been evacuated, and this is despite the fact that benzene levels are still being found in the air. Now, the EPA has not released all of the specifics here. It's saying low levels of benzene, so we'll get into that in this video. We're also going to cover the EPA not responding to my questions about residential air testing in this area. In my opinion, residential air testing should absolutely be taking place, considering the neighborhoods that are in this area are the area where benzene is still being found at low levels in quotations, because we'll also get into the fact that low levels of benzene can still be harmful according to NIOSH and OSHA guidelines. Low levels doesn't have a specific definition, so the fact that the EPA is not putting that information out is a bit concerning to me. And then lastly, some absolutely wild documents that the county that this happened in, Wayne County, Indiana, health department is putting out about how these residents should be cleaning their homes. Some of the stuff in there certainly leads me to believe that it's not safe for these folks to be here without some sort of residential air testing being done. So we'll go through that document that was sent to residents. And then finally, a rare mainstream media story that actually ties this incident together with East Palestine and talks about how all of these tragic toxic events that are going on across the United States are very clearly becoming a big problem. Obviously, we've been talking about that here on Status Coup for a while. Nice to see at least a 1.5 minute story done about it in the mainstream media. I doubt that they're going to talk about it anymore after that, but wanted to give a little bit of a glimpse into that. But first, we're going to start with the EPA's latest statement on this. Colin, we can go ahead and pull that up on the screen. Alrighty, so this is the April 17th update. EPA is conducting 24-hour air monitoring until the Richmond Fire Department declares the fire is out due to the potential for flare-ups at the site. For all contaminants, overnight air monitoring results were non-detectable levels except for particulate matter. Particular levels were, quote, good in the range according to the Air Quality Index. Air sample results for volatile organic compounds were mostly non-detectable levels, with one low-level detection for benzene. That seems like it would be a problem to me, but I don't know. I guess I'll sleep with benzene in the air. But EPA posted roving air monitoring data to the website and will post final validated air sample results when available. Yesterday, Wayne County Emergency Management Agency made the decision to lift evacuation order in the half-mile radius surrounding the site. EPA's air monitoring data and preliminary air sampling data taken at the site and in the surrounding communities was provided to the EMA and to the Wayne County Health Department. EPA's data sharing agreement with local, state, and federal responding agencies allows the agency to share preliminary data with these entities. Final data will be made public after the quality assurance/quality controlled processes. So again, in that, the big red flag to me is, it's making everything sound like everything is fine and dandy, but we are still detecting low levels of benzene just north of the site. We'll get into that in a second, but there are neighborhoods in this area. Benzene is not something you want to mess around with. To prove that point, we can go ahead and pull up the next document here, which shows that it shows a couple things. Number one, depending on what you look at, OSHA or NIOSH data. Again, let's look at NIOSH here. The recommended airborne exposure limit, or REL, is 0.1 parts per million, averaged over a 10-hour work shift, and 1 part per million not to be exceeded during any 15-minute work period. Meaning you shouldn't be exposed to 1 part per million of this for 15 minutes. And one major thing of note here, I'll be very curious to see the specific instruments that have been used to test for this stuff, but 0.1 parts per million, in a lot of cases, is the low threshold for what the instruments being used by the EPA, at least in East Palestine, that was their low bar of what they could accurately test for. So that's a major red flag. And I'll say up here too, early on in this at least, we were hearing reports of smelling some of these things. The odor threshold for benzene is 12 parts per million. So if you're smelling chemicals, again, there's other chemicals involved here, but one of the chemicals is benzene, and you can see right here the odor threshold for benzene is 12 parts per million. Now you can also look at OSHA and see, OSHA's exposure limit is 1 parts per million averaged over an 8-hour work shift, 5 parts per million not to be exceeded during any 15-minute work period. So that's obviously higher than the NIOSH levels. But still, we're not talking about workplaces here. We are now talking about people's homes in a lot of cases here, because again, this happened right on the edge of a neighborhood. Colin, you can go ahead and pull up the map here. But again, you see the factory right here, and just to the north is a pretty freaking big neighborhood. How come this is okay? How can these residents have not seen specific results and be told that it's fine to return? This process should be much more transparent, just like it should be in many of these places. But yet again, it is not transparent. And when we get into more of the nitty-gritty here, so I initially reached out to the EPA about residential testing, and they were like, oh, well, this isn't necessarily our thing we're in charge of. The fire department's still in charge. Maybe try reaching out to Wayne County Emergency Management. So I've reached out to Wayne County Emergency Management twice, and they've yet to respond to either of my requests for comment about residential air testing. Again, we saw this play out in East Palestine, where residential air testing needed to be done. There, the residential air testing that was done was vastly insufficient. The EPA themselves admitted that the devices that they were using weren't reading low enough levels, but the correct equipment does exist to do this the right way. They can be using more sensitive monitors. They can be doing other samples where they swab surfaces in the homes and send them to a lab to be, come back as everything's all good. They're not doing this right now. And I'm not even getting to the end of this where dioxins could be coming into play. Dioxins were absolutely created during this fire. We saw images of the black smoke. You can see them right now, images of the black smoke. That went right through this neighborhood. Right over it, right through it. Dioxin's heavier than air. We've covered this before, and it will settle into some of these areas. So not only is residential air testing not being done, there's been zero conversation about dioxin testing being done as well. And sure, this is impacting a smaller area, although it will impact folks outside of this half-a-mile zone for sure. And again, credit to the mainstream media clip we'll play at the end here. They talked to somebody who was 4 or 5 miles away and talked about the effects that it was having on him, in this case in Indiana. So again, this affects outside of the half-a-mile zone, but we don't even know the impacts of what's happening inside that half-a-mile zone because tests in these homes hasn't been done. These people left real quickly. It's not like they sat there and taped up their windows before they left. This stuff will get into your home. And I would say that it sure seems like they know that it's gotten into the homes, because the next end of this, the next part of this, relates to the document that the Wayne County Health Department, again, where this happened, Wayne County, Indiana, is sending for how to clean your home when you return. Colin, you can go ahead and pull that up. We'll start with just a brief thing on the outdoor debris removal, because people were having stuff landing, actual pieces of the building, big piles of debris and whatnot, not big piles, but parts of the debris landing in their yards quite a ways away, in some cases miles away from where this fire happened. And officials early on warned not to touch it because of the potential for asbestos in the building, which is a part of this we haven't really talked much about, but I'm going to read a little bit of the outdoor debris removal first. So do not move or try to clean up any suspicious debris left from the fire. To register for the property for debris removal, fill out this form here. To clean surfaces outdoors, use a regular garden hose to wash ash, soot, and dust off of the item. If visible residue remains, use a mild cleanser with a damp cloth to clean. So they don't want you touching any of this stuff because of the potential for asbestos and whatnot. That is nice that they actually have people coming out to clean it up the appropriate way. So that is a good step here. But when we scroll further down this document, I'm going to read through all of the cleaning the interior parts, and you'll see for yourselves here. So, to ensure thorough cleaning while protecting skin from strong household detergents, because that's what they're worried about, the detergents, Wear gloves during cleaning a property's interior. Wipe down any items that appear to have visible ash or dust, and be sure to clean frequently touched items such as light switches, remotes, food prep areas, and children's toys. After completing the cleaning, wash hands thoroughly with soap and water before removing the gloves. Hard surfaces. Clean hard surfaces, including the inside of cabinets, drawers, closets, using soap and water. Wash pots, pans, and flatware with soap and water, rinsing thoroughly. Use soap and water to remove visible soot from walls, floors, and furniture. Visible soot on walls, floors, and furniture. But there hasn't been residential air testing done? But they're having to give instructions for how to do that? We'll continue here. If washing walls, start in small sections. Floor up to prevent streaking. Wash your ceilings last. If your walls have wallpaper, do not overly wet the walls. Commercial paste can help glue down any sections or edges that come loose. Soft surfaces, and this part is what shocked me the most here in a second. Clean soft surfaces, including carpets and rugs, by first vacuuming up visible residue. Air out the home during vacuuming. Do small amounts at a time and take frequent breaks. The fact that they're telling you to vacuum small amounts at a time and take frequent breaks because of whatever the hell has ended up inside of these people's homes is outrageous. I mean, I hope that this is them overreacting, but how would they know if they haven't done residential air testing? I haven't seen anything on residential air testing. I've asked the EPA about residential air testing multiple times. They have not responded to that question at all. They just ignore that part of whatever question I put in. I've reached out to Wayne County Emergency Management on multiple occasions and received zero responses from them at all. At least the EPA will respond to me. How are these people supposed to feel comfortable going back into their home and needing to be careful with while vacuuming and air out the house while they're doing it and only vacuum small sections at a time? But that's fine. That's normal. That's all good. They don't need to worry about a residential air test. Half a mile evacuation zone, we don't need that anymore. That seems fairly ridiculous to me. The laundry items is pretty straightforward down below. But man, those cleaning instructions to me say that things inside of these people's homes aren't right. I'm working on trying to connect with some folks who actually live in this area. If you live in this area, if your home is in this area, I would love to chat with you. Please email us, info@statuscoup.com. If you're on Twitter, you can also DM me at LewisD217 on Twitter. I check those, so feel free to reach out there. Even if your home is fine. If your home is fine, I hope it's fine. Please reach out and tell me. Actually, I walked in, none of that stuff that you just talked about with the household cleaning stuff was necessary. I hope that is the case for you. I'm not that optimistic, unfortunately. I would imagine, based on those images that we all watched of the toxic smoke plumes creating a, quote, limitless spectrum of chemicals, according to the expert that I'm speaking with, blowing through this neighborhood and beyond, you're going to have some issues that are going to need to be dealt with. The last thing I want to get to here, we've got this story that ran on NBC News, actually tying what is happening in Indiana together with what is happening in East Palestine still, the ongoing cleanup in East Palestine still, tying these two locations together. Colin, go ahead and play that next clip.
From that massive fire in Georgia to a chemical spill near Philadelphia, the train derailment in East Palestine and the plastics fire in Richmond, Indiana, fear of the unknown is most terrifying. The EPA finding hydrogen cyanide, benzene, chlorine, and carbon monoxide.
It's hard for me to breathe. My lungs are hurting. I have extremely bad headaches.
Lynn Childers already had emphysema. He lives 5.5 miles from the Richmond fire and was outside gardening with his great-grandchild.
And this black looked like soot or something falling from the sky.
Sharice Munyon lives in East Palestine.
I'm concerned with myself, but I want to make sure that my kids are going to be okay.
A coalition of groups working to track and prevent chemical disasters estimates there's a chemical fire, explosion, or toxic release every other day in this country.
That is just simply too much. You can't smell cancer on your skin, right? So these chemicals can do harm either immediately or over a long period of time.
The coalition wants stronger EPA regulations on hazmat storage, switching to safer alternatives, and informing communities and firefighters of the toxins in their backyards. Lung experts warn even minimal exposure to some toxins can do lasting damage.
The effects can last for some time. And how long? Could be weeks, could be months, could be years.
Lynn Childers is most concerned for his 4-year-old great-grandchild.
My time probably is short in this life, but my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, what's the long-term health effects of this going to be on her?
The chemical concerns come as non-smoking lung cancer rates are rising in the U.S. Researchers blame exposure to air pollution and toxins.
So again, fairly rare to see those stories in mainstream media for whatever reason. I'm glad that it got a little bit of coverage here and that they're seeing some of the bigger picture here of, yes, this is impacting Richmond, Indiana right now. Yes, this is impacting East Palestine right now. Yes, this is impacting dozens of other places that we're not hearing about right now. But what can be done to prevent this in the future? What can be done, like that older gentleman was saying there, to make sure that kids who are in these areas, who have no fault of their own involved with any of these things, are protected and not getting cancers at alarming rates in the future? Again, when you see these things in East Palestine, vinyl chloride, butyl acrylate, all these other things, the chemical byproducts, many of these things are carcinogens. I hope it's not the case, but in 10 years, how many people in East Palestine are going to be dealing with cancer and other long-term health effects? How many people, you've seen Jordan's reporting in Flint, he's getting ready to go back very soon. How many people in Flint are still very sick, have rare forms of cancer, have died since then, who are people who should not have died at this stage in their life? So this is a much bigger issue than just these individual locations that we're talking about. This is something that is much, much bigger. There needs to be a lot more pressure put on local, state, and the federal government to make sure that people know what is being stored in these facilities near their homes, what is being kicking the can down the road as far as infrastructure projects that, if something goes wrong, could lead to one of these disasters in your town, my town, or anybody else's town across the U.S. We're going to continue to provide updates on this. I mentioned Jordan's getting ready to head back to Flint in the next couple weeks. I'm getting ready to head back to East Palestine again in the next couple weeks. If you're able to support our reporting both on the ground and while we're away at home off the ground here, please consider becoming a member. StatusCoup.com/join is the main way to do it. If you're just seeing us for the first time here, press the subscribe button down below. You can follow me on Twitter at LewisD217. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a good day.